Hello, my name is Iris Bowling, and I will be doing a reading from two of my novels for you today. The first one is News with Curves, which is a standalone novel, and then the second would be Invested, which is the first book in my Dunning series. So I'm going to start with News with Curves, and I'm going to read what's on the back cover for you so you know what the story is all about. When investigative reporter Rachel Fontaine stumbles into a story involving judges, so-called pillars of society, she has no idea it would lead to discovery of modern-day slavery or murder. Raised with the in-depth sense of justice and the desire to expose the wrongs of the world, Rachel sets out to find the truth behind the incarceration of a young man of color. Wade Tyson of the Tyson Communications family has no idea what he is walking into when he takes over as news producer for Tyson Broadcasting. From his first encounter with the mildly opinionated Rachel Fontaine, his life will be forever changed. Armed with no boundaries and seeking the truth, he listens to her theory of unexplainable sentencing practices of certain judges and finds himself the victim of an attempted murder. Pushing aside the sexual tensions, his crazy brothers, and her ever-questioning father, Wade and Rachel dig deeper into her theory, eventually uncovering a conspiracy that neither realized how wide or far up the political chain it lives. The pie infiltration begins. Okay, now I'm going to read you a little part of this, and in this particular area, Rachel has just been arrested. So let's see why. She was in handcuffs. No, not the cute plastic wrist tie kind. Oh no. Rachel was sporting the good old-fashioned Smith & Wesson metal cuffs, accompanied by a Deputy Bonnie Fife look-alike on her arm. How in the hell did she end up in cuffs? Her father was going to have a fit when he got wind of her latest escapade. I've told you several times now that I'm an investigative reporter with Cahill Broadcasting. Then she caught herself. She had to remember to get the new name right. Tyson Broadcasting, WRGN Channel 7. You are detaining me, therefore stopping all over my Fifth Amendment rights. Tell it to the judge, the officer replied as he stepped in front of the sergeant's desk. Booker on disturbing the peace and assault on a police officer with a deadly weapon. Assault with a deadly weapon? What are you talking about? I do not have any weapons. Your mouth, the officer yelled in her face, is a deadly weapon. If it's not, I'm going to petition the court to declare it one. Rachel yelled back, do you even know how to spell the word petition? Hello, Rachel, the man behind the desk acknowledged her. Hi, Sarge. Do you want me to call your father? The sergeant asked as he keyed the information into the computer. No thanks, Sarge. You know this mouth, Sarge? Surprise clear in the officer's tone. I do, and so do you, the sergeant laughed. This is Judge Fontaine's little girl. Chief Judge Fontaine? The sergeant nodded as he continued to key information into the computer. This is his baby girl, Rachel. Can we dispense of the introductions? Rachel cut in. This officer, and I use the term lightly, doesn't know people can congregate as long as they are not disturbing the peace or impeding in any other person's right to usage of said corner. When an officer asks you to disperse, you disperse, the officer replied back. When a citizen asks you what's the problem, the response should not be, put your hands behind your back. The sergeant whistled, caught everyone's attention in the lobby, including Rachel and the officers, bringing their back and forth hostility to an end. If you would be so kind as to escort Miss Fontaine to the holding cell C, I would be appreciative. You know, Sarge, you could have just shortened that to take Rachel to the ship. Take her to the cell. Rachel replied. The officer took her by the arm, then pulled her through the closing doors as she spoke. I would have never taken you for Judge Fontaine's daughter. The officer shook his head from side to side. What, you wouldn't have stomped on my constitutional rights if you had known? No, I still would have arrested you, but I would have called him first. Maybe he could have talked some sense into you. I would bet on that, Rachel laughed as the officer closed the door to the cell. My father would be the first to tell you I have my own sense of right and wrong. In fact, he encourages it. Really? The officer stood outside the bars. So tell me, why didn't you want the sergeant to call him? Rachel sighed, then sat on the bench inside the holding cell. No response? I don't think your father would be too pleased with your actions this evening. For all that mouth you have, I think you know that. The officer smirked and walked away. Rachel looked around. They had her in a cell to herself. Wouldn't Daddy be proud, she said to her. Sit back and sighed. The outcome of tonight did not turn out the way she planned. She needed to find out what happened to Chad Perkins. He was a 16-year-old black male taken in for shoplifting and a misdemeanor, which according to his mother wasn't shoplifting at all. The kid went to the drugstore to pick up a prescription the mother had paid for online. Chad picked up the prescription and was walking out the door when the pharmacist's computer systems went down. The door scanner read the prescription as unpaid and sounded. The manager insisted the boy be arrested, and the officer complied. The officer told Chad's mother not to worry about it too much. He told her to take the copy of the online transaction to court, and he was sure charges would be dropped. Judge Paula Reed did not see the incident as a computer error, stating the mother could have falsified the document. Chad was sentenced to a maximum 12 months in jail and a $2,500 fine. Chad's cousin, Niecy, knew Rachel was a reporter and asked her to look into it. As she did with all her assignments, Rachel began investigating the story. She spoke with the manager at the store who called in the robbery. His words, not hers. He refused to answer any questions or explain why he simply did not check the computer system when it came back up. Next, she spoke with the arresting officer who indicated he did not want to make the arrest, for it seemed like a simple computer error. However, once the store manager insisted on moving forward, he had no choice. The officer seemed very surprised when the judge imposed a sentence of a year in jail. In fact, he stated he had a similar case where a young man was charged with a simple misdemeanor and received a harsh sentence from the same judge. It was at that point that Rachel decided to look into the sentencing practices of Judge Paula Reed. That's it. That is from News with Curves. Now I'm going to switch stories. And now I'm going to read you an excerpt. Well, first I'm going to read the back and let you know what Invested is about. Miles Dunning, the 35-year-old CEO of Dunning Bank and Trust, is fighting off one takeover attempt after another to save the family's historical bank. Recently ranked the third largest bank in the world, the leaders in the financial industry conspire to prevent further growth by any means necessary. Christina Price is a voluptuous, lovable powerhouse whose sole purpose in life is to uplift and protect the man she has loved from the first day she met him, Miles Dunning. Discovering enemies close and afar, Christina throws everything she has into uncovering and blocking each attempt to bring Miles down. After a boardroom victory raised the bank closer to the number 2 ranking, Miles and Christina share a victory kiss that unleashes an unstoppable flow of love that no dam could control. The bliss of love is short-lived when Miles learns a tragic truth. Now, at the beginning of the story, Miles' father, Hepburn Dunning, dies. Here's how that takes place. Hepburn Dunning envisioned the last day of his life differently. Lying in bed with his beautiful wife, Winifred, who he called Winnie, and his 5 children standing around with pride and, of course, sadness in their eyes. He really did not expect it to look like this. Daddy, Anna Marie stopped her movement on the elliptical machine. She calmly turned towards him. Help me to understand. Canaan is a good man. You have him on your board of directors, a board you put him on without a vote from all of the members. That demonstrates to me that what you think of him. Please explain why you forbid me to see him. Hepburn turned away from his beautiful baby girl, seeing the hurt in her eyes towards his heart. If he had known about the budding romance, he would have put a stop to it sooner. At this point, it seems the relationship was more advanced than he thought. To complicate matters, Annie, as he called his youngest child, was right. Canaan Scott was one of the most honorable men he had the pleasure of knowing. Under other circumstances, he would welcome the man into Annie's life with open arms. However, life isn't fair. The circumstances are what they are. He placed the towel, capturing the sweat from his run on the treadmill around his shoulders, then glanced out the floor-to-ceiling windows that surrounded the rooftop gym of Dunning Bank and Trust. This was his morning refuge, his getaway spot before employees began filing in the room for their morning workout. Hepburn had asked Anna Marie to join him for his 7 a.m. routine workout to discuss Canaan Scott. He did not imagine it would be this difficult. Knowing he had to stand his ground for giving in could put her life in jeopardy. He took a deep breath. Have I ever interfered in your relationships? He snapped as he turned back to face her. No, Daddy, you haven't. Anna Marie stepped off the machine and wiped her face with a towel. That is why I don't understand why you are doing it now. What are you not telling me? He could hear her anger elevating as she spoke. Her expressive eyes, reflecting confusion and hurt, could not deter him from what he had to do. No matter how much she looked like her mother with her hair up in a ponytail. I'm your father, and I'm telling you not to see this man socially, he yelled as he walked between the circuit equipment towards her. I am not going to repeat myself on this, Anna Marie. You break things off with this man, or I will do it for you. Have I made myself clear? Anna Marie took a step back. No, Daddy. You are damn sure loud enough. However, your clarity seems to be escaping me at the moment. I've never seen you this upset. Well, once, but that was directed at Uncle Walker. It would be okay if I knew why. It is so unlike you to take such an unyielding stance. You have always listened to reason. Her eyes narrowed as she took a step towards him. In case you've forgotten, I'm a grown woman. I can make my own decisions on the man I wish to be involved with. Now, she took a step back as she stared directly into his eyes. I respect you. In most situations, take your advice. However, we are talking about my heart here. I love this man, and I am not willing to walk away from him without you giving me some insight other than your caveman mentality of overprotectiveness. His baby girl was much like her mother. Hep wanted to laugh at her, standing her ground with her hands on her hips, ready to fight for her man. If it were any other man, he would be impressed. However, it was Canaan Scott, and for her own good, he had to put a stop to this relationship. He'd rather have her angry and not speaking at him than dead. Well, he had to think about that for a minute. He did not like when his Annie wasn't speaking to him. It was as if his heart was breaking into small pieces with each passing moment. Now you listen to me, Annie Marie Dunning. You continue to see this man and I will fire him. If you disobey me after that, I will disown you and make the ground both of you walk on a living hell. Anna Marie mouth gaped open. Do you plan on firing me too? Are you speaking for yourself or the entire family? She waved him off. You know, it doesn't even matter who you're speaking of. You lose. I would stay with Canaan simply because he would not put me in the impossible position to choose between him and my family. If I have to choose between being with him and ever speaking to you again, I choose him. She turned, walked down the open road, pushed the button to the elevator, and waited. Knowing it was an empty threat, Hepburn walked from the row of elliptical and treadmills as he called out to her, Anna Marie, wait. The center elevator door opened. She stepped inside, turned back to him, then pushed the button. Goodbye, Daddy. Annie, Hepburn sighed as the doors closed. He shook his head, but had to smile at his daughter's stance. She was indeed her mother's child. Standing, he had to laugh at the thought of his wife's response to this when he told her about it. Winifred would get a good laugh out of her daughter's actions. She would probably cheer Anna Marie on. He started walking towards the shower rooms when he heard the elevator bell. Turning back, he briskly retraced his steps to the elevator, thinking it was Anna Marie coming back with Miles. He would simply gather her in his arms and hug her until she could feel how much he loved her. Then he would take Miles aside and tell him the details of Canaan. The doors opened, but no one stepped out. Annie, Hepburn called out. His steps slowed as he got to the elevator. Pulling the towel from his shoulder, he looked inside. Before he could react, a gloved hand jabbed a syringe into his chest. That was Invested, and the first reading was News with Curves. I hope you have enjoyed both readings. Thank you for joining us.